And now to our main conversation for tonight, everyone. The Nigerian government has suspended microblogging site and social media engine Twitter indefinitely. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, announced the suspension in a statement issued by his office today. The government cites the persistent use of the platform for activities that are capable of undermining Nigeria's corporate existence. The government is also considering licensing social media operations in Nigeria. The statement said the minister has directed the National Broadcasting Commission (NBC) to immediately commence the process of licensing all OTT and social media operations in Nigeria. Let's now get some perspective into this matter. I have joining me a communication and information communication and technology expert, the executive director of Paradigm Initiative, Mr. Gbenga, Sesan, who joins us virtually from Lagos. And here in the Abuja studio is a former presidential aspirant of the APC and CEO of IPI Solutions, Mr. Adamu Garba. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
I think it's going to be good for us to begin with some education on what has happened today. Let me begin with Mr. Gbenga Sesan. As an expert, help us make sense of what this move by the federal government means. My Twitter is still working. I'm still getting some tweets. What does this move technically and literally, what does this mean, this suspension? I don't know if Gbenga can hear me. So the question I was asking, or that I asked, is we need to know, maybe we need to educate our viewers at this moment to know what exactly this means technically and literally. When the government says it suspends Twitter, but we see it's working. So what should we be expecting from this action?
Well, thank you for having me on Politics Today tonight, Phil. What this means is that government has demonstrated the intent to cut off Twitter services in Nigeria. The reason why people are still on Twitter is because it is impossible for Twitter to be cut off by pronouncement or by fiat. That's impossible. There are many ways that government can go about doing it. Government can go through legal action, which is not likely, given the sort of urgency that we've seen in the statement. Government could shut down the entire internet in Nigeria by asking telcos and ISPs to cooperate with them, which is not likely because that would be the worst and maybe the most stupid action that any government would take in this circumstance and in the times we're in. The likely route is that as we speak right now, that the information minister has either communicated already or has started a chain of communication to two groups of people. One, telecom service providers, and the second, the other non-telecom but internet service providers. And what government will tell them to do is to block Twitter, access to Twitter from Nigeria. This is not new. Government in Nigeria has done this before. Remember during the NSAF protest, they blocked access to some websites in Nigeria. So they could do that in many ways, technically DNS blocking or other ways. And that is what I believe they will now be working towards. Of course, the reaction to that from the telcos and the ISPs is another matter entirely. But what is also very interesting, Shil, is that this instruction is coming from the Ministry of Information to the NBC and asking the NBC to license over the top services or people providing services over the internet. But it is weird because they do not fall within the jurisdiction of the NBC. These are licensees of the NCC, the Nigerian Communications Commission. So I think we need a lot more information from government, on how exactly they want to do this, because it sounds to me right now like, an empty barrel that is really making a lot of noise.
If I get you right, Twitter will still be working. People will still be able to have access.
Yes. People can have access even if government goes ahead to block Twitter in Nigeria. That's what circumvention is all about. Basically, all you need is to download a VPN. There are many VPN apps. There are many people who provide, that service either for free or at the cost, or some for free. And using that VPN on your mobile device or on your any other device, you can still gain access to Twitter. So in a way, it's a waste of time and resources for government to think it can block people from using Twitter in Nigeria. It's like a cat chasing its own tail. It's not going to happen. It's not possible, because circumvention is definitely an option for people that want to use Twitter.
Get into the matter which led to this face-off between the government and Twitter. My other guest here, Mr. Adamu Garba, is one that is perhaps happy at this moment because you've been fighting Twitter and you're not happy with the operations of Twitter, and you're happy today, isn't it?
Yes, I'm happy, seriously. And it's clearly showing that actions cannot just happen without consequences. And Twitter, if you study their mode for the last 2 years, they have been more of an anti-Nigerian force, pro-destruction of Nigeria, than actually a platform that's supposed to advocate for freedom of expression of Nigerians. Because if you look at what happened now with the suspension of maybe removal of some of the tweets of the president, I can't see any very strong word, a vile word like that of that criminal Nnamdi Kanu that has been left to still be available on Twitter. Meanwhile, a president of a country who is democratically and legitimately elected to be the leader of a nation, making a statement, talking, giving a language, we will communicate in the language that they understand, and that becomes a very serious issue to Twitter, and violating their rules. We don't know what kind of rule is that, and then they decided to embarrass the country, not the president. So therefore, they have to be suspended. You know, as you rightly said, I took them to court during NSAS process simply because I noticed exactly what these guys are trying to do is to break this country. They tend to amplify a lot of fake news and raise a lot of tension in the state, making the country to be more destroyed. So the best solution is to see how we can arrest them. And we did that. So at that moment, so many Nigerians don't understand. They came attacking me, insulting me, calling me a series of names simply because they thought I was going against NSAS. I wasn't against NSAS. I was against a tool that is planning to destroy Nigeria. And we have seen that very clearly. We have a very serious crisis in the southeast where these guys are destroying fundamental institutions of Nigerian democracy, INEC offices, police institutions, courts. They are killing people on the street, destroying people's properties. And then Twitter is behind them. That's why I used to call them, I think Twitter is like kind of an IPOP online machine. Because what they do more is supporting IPOP much more than the government. And IPOP, everyone knows they are anti-Nigeria. Their target is to destroy Nigeria. This even left somebody to be asking questions. We have Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the current director of WTO, on the board of Twitter. Is she part of the instigators of Twitter? Why won't she call them to order when they are talking against Nigeria? Why is it that we never had a single tweet or any comment from Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala about the activities of Twitter? Is she supporting IPOP? These are the kind of things that we need to be very, very clear about.
Into the conversation,
it is very, very necessary because this is very serious. You can't have an organization, a platform company, a company that is profit-making, that is even making profit out of Nigeria, that has its massive users in Nigerian domain, that decided to carry its office to Ghana and employ Ghanaians against Nigerians, and then decided to keep sponsoring content against Nigeria and Nigeria's interests all the time. And then we decided to sit down and keep it. So we have to ask some questions. It's not all about Twitter. It's about the corporate existence of a country from a vile individual that is constantly calling the blood of me as a Fulani man and the blood of all Nigerians and any other person that claims to be Nigeria. So it's a very serious issue. It's not something we need to take it lightly. And that is why I am particularly very happy that the government has seen Twitter for who they are and decided to take this action.
All right.
Yes.
We need to take a breather. But when we come back, there's much more to talk about government's decision, what this means for Twitter. Are people getting money from Twitter? What economically this means for those who are earning any living? Because there are a lot of reactions also in this regard. What does it mean for the civil space in Nigeria? And of course, those are saying that it may and it may not be extended in terms of in the indefinite strike. Maybe it will be reviewed. We look at those perspectives when we return from this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us right here on Channels Television. My guest tonight, Mr. Gbenga Sesan, is an ICT expert and the CEO of Paradigm Initiative. Mr. Adamu Garba is also a former presidential aspirant of the APC. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming tonight.
Very much.
Let's continue the conversation and let's go into the meat of the matter. The reason why the federal government made this move, why Twitter deleted President Buhari's tweet. Let me come to you, Mr. Sesan. Do you find that tweet, do you find any hate in that tweet? Was it right for Twitter to have deleted the tweet by the president?
Of course, Twitter should delete that tweet very, very clearly. Not only because of what it represents, but also because it is coming from the president of a country that is divided at the moment. Listen, Twitter has rules. I had Mr. Garba, right? Mr. Garba saying earlier that maybe one of the board members should have intervened because, you know, he's a Nigerian and things like that. I suspect maybe you run a one-man company, but companies don't run that way. Boards don't dictate to people what they should do. There are set rules. Twitter is a commercial service that people sign up to, and there are rules, there are community standards that everyone subscribes to before joining Twitter. And I think there are two levels here. One is the level of the community standards on Twitter that says that anything that promotes hate, which was very clear within the context of what the president was saying and how he said it and what he has said before and what has happened before. I mean, it's a shame that a president would even say that at a time when the memorial of the whole, you know, of Biafra, the idea, and of course, even the, you know, the things that happened in the Civil War were being discussed online. But secondly, Twitter did not act by itself. And I think this is really important for everyone to understand. Twitter acted based on reports. Nigerians reported that tweet and considered it hateful. And then the process starts of review. If it was reviewed by Twitter and it was discovered to be hateful, then it's taken down. If it's not hateful, and I'll give you a parallel example. During the during the NSAS protest, I'm making my protest now. During the NSAS protest, the flag, the Nigerian flag that was stained with blood, that was used on Twitter was flagged as hate, and it was removed. But an appeal process went through, and the flag was restored. So if the president and all of his aides and his fans believe that what it said is right, and not lacking in empathy and not full of hate, then they can appeal that. But the fact that the government has now, you know, put up the big gun, in their minds, the government has now put the big gun, which is quite silly because you cannot say that you're banning that service because people can still have access to it. But clearly, that statement should have been flagged, and I think there's precedence for us to understand here. When in January, when earlier in the year there were flaggings, you know, of accounts of the president of the United States, and also the same thing that happened in Uganda, it was something that people were saying that, you know, even people who support this government were beginning to give that as an example to say that, well, this is flagged. Why didn't, you know, Twitter flag the things that were said during the NSAS protest? And to the question, and I think it's important, if you allow me to quickly kill some nonsense I heard earlier about NSAS protesters being people who are against Nigeria and want Nigeria destroyed. I think it's far from it. The reason why people are asking questions and saying, don't kill us, the reason why people are speaking their minds on social media is because they want a better country. If people did not want a better country, they would keep quiet and behave like zombies, as Abuja expects. But the fact that we're in a democracy, which I believe everyone agrees, we started in 1999 after the breaks and hiccups that we had. If we're truly in a democracy, then there is no reason why anyone should not be able to speak their mind. Like I said earlier, if the president has a problem with Twitter, then he can take his case to Twitter and appeal as a company. And nobody should, you know, say funny things like a board member should be intervening, because that's what one-man companies or one-woman companies do. That's not what corporations do. But in this case, Twitter has become...
So let me bring Mr. Adam Garba back into the conversation. I would like you to respond, and also perhaps put this into the packet of your response. The PDP, the opposition party, has reacted. They said, look, the president and the government should not do that, and that they're pushing Nigerians to the wall. One of the chieftains of the PDP, the former Senate President Bukola Saraki, says this should not be the response from the president of a nation with a vibrant youthful population for whom Twitter is part of their daily lives and a source of livelihood, income and livelihood. This must be reviewed. Are Nigerians getting their livelihood? Are some Nigerians getting livelihood there? I'd like you to react to all of that.
Yeah, the thing is, I think PDP is just trying to take advantage of the current political climate against the interests of national security. The issue of information adulteration that we are seeing so much on social media is actually a question of national security. Almost 50% of war are won on media. And the 21st century has shown us that social media is very pivotal to victory of war and destruction of countries. You need to check the history of what brought down Mubarak's regime. It was Facebook revolution. Similarly, Gaddafi, it was purely social media. That's where they now advocated their head and they rose a tension that destroyed Libya, that we see Libya today. Similarly, Syria, about 600,000 people died. All the protest starts on social media. This is issue of national security. It's not a civil conversation anymore. And what Twitter has been using consistently is to take advantage of the civil rights that Nigerians have to be able to advocate against the interests of the country. We cannot allow, I think this is the time that government even supposed to look at this much more deeply, because the most stable countries in the world are the countries that are not on that control and regulate the flow of social media. Like China, for instance. China is one of the most stable countries in the world simply because they decided not to allow these foreign social platforms in their land, so that they can allow Chinese people to express themselves using Chinese culture in Chinese language, using Chinese way of life without any adulteration from other foreign alien cultures that may adulterate their system and cause them against each other. And if you look at that and then come back to Hong Kong, where it is a Chinese and English kind of hybrid, you will see very clearly, because they have access to this kind of social media, there is constant constant problem. And similarly, if you go back to Russia, Russia became very stable when Putin decided to enact laws to be able to shut down these social platforms that are trying to cause problems in their country. And Russia became very stable.
And you perhaps don't think that this might be a gagging of the civil or a restriction of the civil space?
When there is a case of national security, everything should pend. Why? Because what we are facing through now, you look at the problem with terrorism, you look at the problem with banditry, you look at the problem of kidnapping, you look at the problem of IPOP, you look at almost in every sector of the country, in every section of the country, there is crisis. And then we have so many criminals that leverage this internet to defraud people, spoiling the country's image, doing all those kind of things, and suddenly we now feel like this is civil.
But America, from what I see, they called some of the operators and the executives of these social media giants, they call them to parliament and had conversation about not restricting or not banning them, but getting some restrictions that will not allow this kind of hate or this kind of situation.
The truth of the matter
you think that the government should go in that direction?
Seriously, the truth of the matter is social media platforms, no matter how we want to see it, is a political platform. And the American government and the American system is using Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, and co to do espionage. Now, all those gimmicks of calling them to be able to answer in the name of transparency does not invalidate the fact that the FBI, the CIA, and co are still using these people to be able to advocate the American interests. What of Nigerian interests? But can Nigerian Parliament summon Jack Dorsey to come? Under which jurisdiction? Which law?
Yeah. So what we wonder, you are a member of the APC.
Yes, I am.
Your party used this for the campaigns.
They used this for the campaign,
and but perhaps it helped you. It helped your chances.
It helps the chances of the campaign, and now it is much worse than it helps the chances of the campaign. So the best solution is for us to consider local platforms.
All right.
We have local OTTs. My company has been a local OTT too. That's why, in fact, sometimes people feel like the reason why I was going against Twitter was because we built a Crowy application that is doing something much more than even their own is doing.
You pay for the advertisement. So, so let's go for to allow Mr. Gbenga Sesan to get to react to some of the things that he said. I was asking Mr. Garba if he thinks that this is not a form of gagging of or restricting the civic space. What do you think?
Of course, Sean. I think this is even clear to everyone. This is gagging of free people and of the civic space. And I think it's important to say three clear things. And number one is that this lazy argument that social media has helped people to start protests and all that, I think it is intellectually lazy. Beyond that, social media and other digital platforms have unfrozen social mobility, because people cannot go on radio or TV or go to newspapers without NBC throwing its armor. They need a platform where they can express themselves. People like Mr. Garba, who do not like freedom and democracy, can go to Russia. I think, COVID rules have been relaxed now, so he can get a visa and travel. But for Nigeria, which is our country and a democratic country, we clearly want to allow citizens to be able to speak about the things they want to speak about. That's number one. And I'll come back to this issue of national security, another interesting excuse. If Nigeria, this is my second point, if Nigeria is truly a giant, and Mr. Lai Mohammed is trying to throw his weight around with Twitter and all that, I think it definitely shows that we're not a country that wants to reason properly. Why are we busy chasing other countries' innovations and trying to clamp down on them? Why are there no technological innovative platforms like that? I mean, I'm not talking of platform like the one that was mentioned earlier. I've seen the reviews on the App Store and it speaks to to how useful or useless it is. But I'm saying that we need this country. We need to decide: do we want to create a climate of fear and be chasing people's innovations in other countries, or do we want to create an environment in Nigeria to create such platforms that can be used in other countries?
Because we're out of time now, Mr. Thank you so much, Mr. Gbenga Sesan and Mr. Adamu Garba. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm sure Kimbale. Bye-bye.